So the lab-grown meat is an incredible industry. I myself am not a vegetarian, but there's tons of impacts that it has for folks who are vegetarian or vegan because they really value the animal cruelty aspect. And so with cultivated meat, you can have your chicken breast, you can have your steak without actually having to kill an animal.
Turn this up, turn this up.
Your professional development is one of the keys to your career success. When you combine your desire to grow with actionable steps, your journey to success becomes an incredible reality.
Hi, I'm Paul Ferranvi, aka IncrediPaul, and welcome to IncrediPaul Leadership, where we learn how to become the most incredible versions of ourselves by learning from each other. First off, if you're only listening to this episode, you can also watch it on YouTube. Regardless if you're listening or watching this episode, I really appreciate your support. So today I have the honor of having Dr. Carmen Banks on the show. She is a senior scientist. She is also the founder and CEO of Melanin Science, an organization dedicated to increasing Black and Brown representation in science by providing academic and professional resources to students and young professionals of color. So that was just a little bit about you, Dr. Banks. So how about you introduce yourself the way you would do it?
For sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Paul. Like you said, I'm a senior scientist. I have been working in biotech for about 3 years now, mainly focused on cultivated meat and now doing some pharmaceutical applications with antibody development. And in addition to my role as a scientist, I founded Melanin Science. So for about 7 years throughout grad school and also in my professional career, I've been really dedicated to increasing the scientific field with more people that look like me. More often than not, I'm the only Black person in the room, the only Black woman in the room, and I wanted to be able to change that statistic. I was doing a lot of DE&I work for the College of Agriculture, where I was doing my Ph.D., and then a lot of DE&I work at my first company, and it got to a point where I was like, I can do this on my own. And so I founded Melanin Science to do exactly what I said, increase representation of Black and Brown populations for students and young professionals pursuing science-based careers.
That is so incredible that you're already doing the work through other organizations, and then you're like, I can do this on my own. So kind of talk me through, because I think a lot of people, like, they know about DE&I or we talk about it. But I guess, what does that look like, what you're doing with Melanin Science? Are there like specific aspects you're trying to focus on?
Yeah, so Melanin Science focuses on 3 big pillars: exposure and engagement. So getting students really excited about what they can do in the scientific field, and also opening the doors to all of the different careers that they can have. Myself included, a lot of students will pursue more general life science-based majors like biology. For my major, I was animal science. And a lot of colleges really push students to go the professional track. So whether that's med school or veterinary school, dental school, etc. And so students don't really know what they can do with that degree if they don't want to go and be a doctor or be a veterinarian. And so Melanin Science provides a lot of resources, including panels and workshops, and all of those things. So students know that they don't have to just be a doctor if they have this biology degree. They can be a scientist like myself. They can go into project management. They can go into sales. They can go into HR. The options are limitless. So that's kind of one of our big pillars. Another, of course, is that professional and academic development. So getting our students and professionals equipped with the knowledge and resources that they need to actually pursue those careers. And then the last is active pursuits. So we've partnered with a couple of companies in the Bay Area to actually take the students and have them do industry tours so they can see what it's like to be a scientist or a professional at a large biotech company or in a startup or a pharmaceutical company. So all of those things combine, really getting the students and professionals ready for those careers in science.
That is really incredible. So with Melanin Science, I know you mentioned just right now that you've been able to work with companies in the Bay Area. Is it primarily focused in the Bay Area or in California, or is it broader than that?
Yeah, so we have a flagship program called STEM Connect, and our STEM Connect program is hybrid. So with all of the virtual components, we're able to have a broader reach of students all over the US and potentially all over the globe with
Nice.
our panels and our workshops that are held virtually. Right now, our networking events and the industry visits are local to the Bay Area, but we are hoping to expand that across different cities.
That's really cool. No, I love that because I also do some stuff with STEM and on the nonprofit side, and I feel like there may be
Mhm.
some synergies there because
Mhm.
we do some stuff with some universities across the country. I mean, there's some stuff we can partner with you guys on,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
even yeah. So I think maybe not necessarily in this episode, but we
Yeah.
could definitely talk more about that because I love the work you're doing, and I think it really says something when you have a full-time job, you're passionate about what you do, and then you still want to be able to give back and do even more on top of that because not everyone does that.
Mhm. Yeah, it's been a wild ride to be working full time, and I work in startup.
Oh
So
yeah, wow.
it's even more hectic. The
Yeah.
timelines are times 10. Everything needs to get done tomorrow. And it's a wild ride. But I really, since I was in grad school, I envisioned myself at the intersection between science and DE&I. And it's something
Mm.
that really feeds my soul. Like, I love being a scientist. I love doing what I do in the lab,
Mhm.
but doing the outreach work to bring more people into science that look like me and using my
Mhm.
platform to inspire the next generation is really what gets me up in the morning, and it makes my job more fulfilling.
So that's really cool. There's like that passion and purpose behind what you do, it seems like.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So with that, where did that, can you look back to a time where that kind of started? Because I know you said like when you were in college and grad school, but was there even a time before that that you were really passionate about it? Or was there, I like kind of like talk me through the evolution of you were doing the DEI work to like actually starting Melanin Science.
Yeah. So it's interesting, my journey into science.
Yeah.
I didn't have any formal exposure to STEM before, high school or college, outside of whatever regular education that we get. But
Oh,
I
wow.
was always that kid who was really interested in asking the why questions.
Mhm.
I was like mixing together condiments at dinner. I'm like, why does it taste like this? I always loved animals. I was watching Animal Planet, so I thought I wanted to be a
I
vet
love
at the
Animal
time.
Planet. Yes.
Yeah. So my career trajectory kind of makes sense that I went into science because I'm always that person asking those big questions. And when I went into college, I had the intention on going to vet school. And then when I started working in a animal lab, I realized very quickly it was a chicken lab. I hated working with chickens, and I didn't think I wanted to be a vet anymore. But I was sitting there like, okay, I don't know what to do with this animal science degree. My college didn't do a great job of showcasing the things that you can do with this animal science degree. But I was lucky enough to have a friend who was pursuing grad school at that time. And he had introduced me to all of the different things that you could do with science degrees and encouraged me to start working for a lab. And I worked, ironically enough, in a plant diagnostics lab, which at the time seemed so irrelevant to this animal science degree. But it actually opened the doors to me wanting to be a scientist and also equipped me with a lot of the skills that I used in grad school and still like the technical skills that I use at my job today.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like what kickstarted me to
Mhm.
both want to be a scientist, but also open those doors for students that were in my position because they're depending on, where you go to school and
Mhm.
all of those things, a lot of people aren't exposed to the nuances of even going to graduate school. It's completely different than applying for medical school. You don't just submit an application and
Sure.
then see if you get in. There's a lot of other factors that go into that. And so I really wanted to uncover those and help students and professionals who want to be on my track to get there without having to jump through all of those hoops like I did when I was an undergrad.
No, that's really good. That even how you got in, that you really had much exposure to it, and then you kind of seemed like you just kind of stumbled upon it while
Yeah.
you were going into vet school, or wanted to go to vet school.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because I think our stories are kind of similar. More so on I was on the other side. Like I wanted to go to med school for the
Mm-hmm.
people side of things. And when I got into college, I got exposed to undergraduate research and then fell in love with it. And I feel like my story is just like a lot of different things I see along the way, and I just get passionate about it and I follow it.
Mm-hmm.
So really up until when I graduated, was going to go the grad school route, but I had some experiences in industry and I really loved the idea of working on stuff that I saw out in stores. And then that put me on that path. And then even now working in research and development, getting to go back to doing some of the research stuff I was doing, but it looks a little bit different on the industry side of things. So I think it's really cool that you're able to pursue the passions as they came up, and you didn't just have like this clear set, like, oh, I know exactly what I'm doing. It kind of like
Mm-hmm.
evolved along the way.
Yeah, it's been a huge evolution. Even my transition into cultivated meat was something that I never thought that I would do. It
Really?
was one of those situations where I was finishing up my PhD. I envisioned myself going more into pharma, doing cell and gene therapy, and I got recruited for this job. And
Wow.
at that time, cultivated meat was still pretty new.
Good.
I didn't know really anything about it, but the science seemed really cool. So I was like, why not? Let's give it
Yeah.
a go. And it ended up opening up so many doors for me. Like I was able to be in a couple patents and help develop the
No.
technology for that field. So yeah, it's been like such a whirlwind. And I always encourage my students and my mentees to just say yes to everything, even if it's
Good.
not something that you think is on your path. You never know what will set you up for what you're destined to do and what you're destined to be.
That's a word right there. Say yes to everything.
Yeah,
But yeah, like you never, because you don't know until you actually do it. And then if you just sit back and wait, there's so many opportunities that you can miss.
exactly. And it's equally as important to know what you don't like. Like I realized I hated working with these farm animals and I would have
No
been in vet
chicken.
school miserable. Yeah, exactly. So you got to take those opportunities to learn about yourself.
Yes, no, that's really funny. For me, I mean, there might be some people I don't know if you're a vegetarian or not, but for me, when I think of chickens, I think of eating them, not necessarily
Hmm.
taking care of them.
Yeah.
But I like that you mentioned that the importance of like even the stuff that you know you don't want to do. I guess were there any other stories, either from maybe from you or from your mentees, that are like they started something or you started something and you're like, I didn't want to do that because we already talked about chickens, but I didn't know if there's anything else you kind of came across on your path.
Yeah. After graduates or after my undergrad rather, I started working in a human IVF lab.
Good.
And so that's like another weird pivot on my story where I
Yeah.
started with animals and I worked with plants and I was with
Mhm.
humans and back to animals during my
Wow.
graduate degree. And I really loved reproduction. That's kind of what opened the door for me to want to pursue a PhD in that realm.
Yeah.
But I think it also solidified I don't want to work with people very much. Which is like another factor why I didn't want to go to vet school. I just don't want to be people facing.
Yeah.
And it was
Where?
incredible to be able to impact people's lives. Like you're helping families have, or, have families really,
Mhm.
and have children. And so I loved that aspect, but I really liked being behind the scenes.
Um,
And so being a bench scientist, and there's a lot of different ways that you can be a scientist, that are either on the bench or off the bench. But I
mhm.
realized then that I like being behind the bench. I'm a little
Mhm.
introverted, so I
Mhm.
prefer to have that time where I can just put on my headphones and
Mhm.
do what I need to do in the hood and run my experiments. And it's still a lot of interacting. I mentor students, I have direct
Yeah.
reports, all of that. But it was really nice to be able to step away from the people facing side of
Yeah.
science and then just be in the lab and run my experiments and present my data in that way.
Yeah, yeah, you found your niche and you're able to keep working in there. But you're still,
Mhm.
from what you said, you're still able to mentor and interact and empower people, which is incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I guess with this and like all you've done in Melanin Science and maybe more so, because I had a question, I lost it, but it came back because you talked about cultivated meat. I do not
Hmm.
know much about cultivated meat at all, and I'm guessing that a lot of people in the audience don't either. As far as what you can share, like maybe there's misconception about it, or like what really is what cultivated meat is. Like what is that process as far as what you can share?
Yeah, so a lot of people think cultivated meat, or another word for that would be lab grown meat, is
Yeah.
synonymous with plant based meat, and it's not. So,
Yeah.
plant based meat is exactly what it is, it's plant based. But the cultivated or lab grown meat is actually meat grown from animal cells. And so, what we would do is take, let's say, like a biopsy from a chicken. And if you think about a tissue, a chicken breast or a steak, that piece of tissue is made up of billions and billions of cells.
Mhm.
And so when we take that piece of tissue, we can break that down into individual cells. And then my job in the role of cultivated meat is to take those cells and I can change the genetic makeup of those cells to do specific things. So that might
Wow.
be live longer for a production cycle, or it could be changing into a fat cell, or changing into a muscle cell, or
Oh,
changing into a
wow.
bone cell. And so once we have what we call cell lines,
Okay.
those cell lines will then become the eventual end product. And so
Okay.
those cells are grown in what's called bioreactors, and that process is really similar to brewing beer. It's like a fermentation type of
Oh,
process.
wow.
Yeah, and then at the other end, you'll get your cultivated meat product, whether that's a steak, or there's seafood companies now, bluefin tuna, or
Wow.
a piece of chicken breast, pork, whatever it might be.
Okay. So is there, like, with these different cell lines, is there any particular type of meat that you focus on or your company focuses on?
Yeah, so my current company is a B2B, business to business. So we partner with all types of companies that are in cultivated meat. So we're
Mhm.
not particularly focused on one species. It's
Okay.
really partner dependent.
Okay. So that's cool. Oh,
Yeah.
thanks for sharing that. Because, yeah, we hear about lab grown meat, cultivated meat, and I think it's really important that you share the difference. It's not plant based. It's truly you harvest those cells. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I did some research, which when I was in college, trying to take like mesenchymal stem cells, trying to take them into like more neural-like stem cells. I think the
Mm-hmm.
process is called transdifferentiation. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if that's like a similar process that you're using when you have this cell type and you're trying to go into like a muscle cell, fat cell, something like that.
That's exactly what it is. Yep. It's a
Okay.
differentiation process that you can induce through different methods.
Okay. Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah. So the lab grown meat is an incredible industry. I myself am not a vegetarian, but there's tons
Good.
of impacts that it has for folks who are vegetarian or vegan because they really value the animal cruelty aspect. And
Nice.
so with cultivated meat, you can have your chicken breast, you can have your steak without actually having to kill an animal.
Oh,
And I think it's been interesting for me to be in that field as well because I got my PhD in animal biology and I was working with some farm species again. And I was
your
able,
favorite, right?
my favorite. I did grow to love pigs. I worked with pigs
Okay.
in my
Okay.
PhD and I love pigs now.
Okay. Okay.
But I was able to see some of the um, limitations that exist in conventional farming, disease outbreak, the cost of feed, things of that nature. And so to be a part of a field that can kind of mitigate some of those risks while still having the same end product has been really cool.
Yeah. Seems like there's huge aspects of sustainability in what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really powerful. And then with Melanin Science, I know you do a lot. You work with different companies. That's kind of like jumping back and forth, but jumping back to Melanin Science, is there anything that you're either currently working on or looking to the future that you're really passionate about with Melanin Science?
Yeah, so we're gearing up for our next cohort of STEM Connect.
Good.
And like I said, that's our flagship program. And it is a 6-week program for students and young professionals that is composed of panels, workshops, and then industry visits and networking events. So we're really excited to kick that off again. This will be our second cohort.
Nice.
Last cohort, we had it a mix of both industry and graduate school track. So half of our cohort was more towards students or professionals who want to break into biotech. And then the latter half of the program was more geared towards graduate school. We had panels, postdocs, talk about their experiences. And so we've decided this year we're going to split it up because there's just so much information. And I think students could gain a lot more if we were a little bit more focused in each cohort. So our spring cohort is going to be all about breaking into biotech and some of the innovations and jobs you can do there. And in the fall, we'll have a cohort that is completely geared towards graduate school and all of those nuances and unlocking that so students can get some assistance there.
That's really cool. Love that. Is there information out about that yet, or is it still coming?
It will be on our website soon. So melanin-science.com. We should have that up in the new year. Applications will open. We'll have the events and the schedule of events all on the website. So stay tuned in 2025.
Yes, stay tuned. So this episode will be coming out. It will come out in 2025. So I'll work with you to see if we can make sure we get that information out.
Perfect.
So that people can get connected, because like what you're doing, get connected with STEM Connect, pun intended there. It is, it's phenomenal what you're doing to be able to empower these people.
Thank you. I'm very excited. I love working with students. I still mentor students outside of Melanin Science that are at my alma mater for my Ph.D. So it's been really fun to be able to guide students and kind of reshape the way that they're thinking too. I was the same way when I was an undergrad, where you think you have to have your life all planned out to the T, and you're freaking out because you're like, gosh, I was supposed to apply to med school and my GPA or my extracurriculars and all of these things, and I don't know what to do. And it's okay. Like, you can take time off between college. That's also an option that a lot of students don't realize is an option. So it's really fun to kind of help shape them and bring them to where they're destined to be.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I feel like we all feel that way when we're in college. And I think a lot of times in different interviews we have, whether it's for grad school, med school, or like industry, they would always ask you like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Which I'm like, like even looking back to like coming out of COVID in 2020, no one saw COVID coming. And so it's like, can you really look that far out? Which it's important to plan really far ahead, but also like you saying yes to different opportunities. Like, it's important to be open to opportunities you come across.
Absolutely. I mean, I still don't know what the next 5 years has in store for me. I have an idea of what I want to do, but will that be it? I don't know. I didn't know I was going to be in cultivated meat. Now I'm in more protein antibody engineering. I had zero idea I was going to be in that, and that just kind of like natural transition because of the way my company is moving. So just staying open and flexible, I think it's really, really important.
No, I agree. And you talked about mentoring students and then also having mentors. Are there any key mentors that you've had that you want to shout out, or like maybe key moments that kind of helped get you where you are right now?
Yeah. So one of my mentors is actually on the show. Shout out to Amelia Badua in the Fearless Her Collective. She has been incredible on my journey. Amelia and I actually worked together at my first job. And she took me under her wing as she was starting up the Fearless Her Collective. And she was one of the really huge supporters that I had for starting Melanin Science. So Melanin Science is new. I started this last January, almost a year now. And Amelia had been incredible in kind of giving me the confidence that I needed to pursue that side hustle type of avenue. And also just connecting me with the right people and putting me in the right places, giving me the encouragement, giving me an ear to talk to and bounce ideas off of. So yeah, Amelia's been incredible, and I cannot say enough good things about her.
That is incredible. And with the connections as well. Yes, like you mentioned, she was on this show, and then she connected me with you because we were talking, and she's like, I know someone that you need to talk with. And we got connected, I was like, yes, Amelia is incredible. And she's also a great connector and all the stuff she does
She is.
with, like, I think it's really special what she does with helping, especially women with the side hustle part of things. Because as far as I don't know anyone that's really focused on that. I know people talk about entrepreneurship as a whole, but the fact that she's really been focusing on the side hustles and making sure that your main company is not the only thing you have.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been eye-opening, really. And I was listening to her podcast and or her episode on your podcast.
Yeah.
And one of the things that she said that really resonated with me, something along the lines of, if you put yourself in a position where the company feeds you, then it can starve you.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, my girl is dropping gems. Like,
She
that was
dropped so many gems.
yes, so many gems. And it's true. I mean, part of the reason I started doing Melanin Science independently is because I think a lot of companies are committed to DE&I on paper, but then when it comes time to show up and put your money where your mouth is and to actually do the work, they don't want to do it. And I got exhausted from working for free. I was working my scientist job, which I'm getting paid for, and then basically doing a DE&I director role for free for a company that might not be completely bought into the mission. And so that's when I was like, okay, I should do this on my own and I can have a broader impact.
Yes.
Using my position as a scientist to do that.
So that's really powerful because, you were doing all these things really for free because, I think, and I talk to people about this because I think it's funny because, yes, we're diverse people in STEM and then it almost becomes a responsibility to do it. And yes, we're passionate about it. But then at the end of the day, you need to pay people for their time, pay people what they're worth. So you're doing all this stuff on top of your day job. So it's like at some point, something's got to give, right?
Yeah, and it's almost going against the mission of DE&I. You're like having marginalized people do this work for free, but the math is not mathing. Like, what are we doing here?
The math is definitely not mathing.
It's not mathing. And at the end of the day, when your performance for your full-time job gets compromised because you're working on DE&I stuff for the company, that's on you. They're going to come look at you and be like, oh, well, you're not performing well enough. And it's like, well, I'm also doing all this DE&I stuff that you wanted me to do.
Yes. It's like, this is also work. And it's really important work. This the work to sustain and get into like even the retention, because I feel like a lot of times with DE&I, we focus on getting people here, but then it's like, how do we retain them? Because the culture that you're creating is just important as trying to get people to your company.
Exactly. So I think it's been a really interesting and intricate balance between working on DE&I for like on a corporate level for companies that you might work for, and then also doing it on an individual level. And I had to learn to set really hard boundaries of I am always open to doing DE&I work, because whatever platforms I can use to bring more marginalized folks into the room, I will do that. But there does have to be some sort of limitation of, okay, this is now someone's job that they get paid for. This is a director DI or whatever that position might be. So I'm willing to help to a certain extent, as long as it's not compromise my work. And I'm also doing those things for my own company now. So
absolutely. No, that's important. Having those boundaries is critical. So with Knowledge STEM is the nonprofit I have, National Alliance for the Acceleration of Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. And so we have different values. Like mentorship is the number one for us. We do lots of mentorship. But one of the last ones that I always share with my team is a shared value, is because we want to make sure that, yes, we're providing value working with these different universities and colleges and organizations sometimes, but we want to make sure that our time is valued as well. Because a lot of times they're like, we're doing this stuff for free sometimes, or if we're having to go places, like we can help virtually for free at times when it makes sense. But with my team, I set the boundaries, like there's no one that is going to travel for anything for free. Like if we're going anywhere, like travel is provided, or
Yeah.
doing it virtually. So I think it's really key that you talk about those boundaries when you're trying to do different things, even in the nonprofit world, like I'm speaking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And then at the end of the day, like you said, it's unfortunate that it feels like the responsibility is on us as marginalized
Mhm.
people because we are the ones affected by it.
Yes.
So if we're not caring about it, then, there might not be anyone who cares about it. But at the
Mhm.
same time, I think people need to realize that this is still a burden that we're
Yes.
bearing and we're passionate about it and we're doing it because we love it and it's not about the money. But at
Mhm.
the same time, it's still work and we
Yeah,
should be
and it's
compensated for whatever work we're doing to benefit your company, which might be for marketing, for recruitment, for
good.
retention. All of that makes the company look good. But what about the people that are doing the work behind the scenes?
Absolutely. At the end of the day, it's still work, like you said.
Yeah.
You said it up. Work
Yeah.
is work, and you need to pay people for work.
Absolutely.
I love that. So as kind of like we've talked a lot about like what you done in Melanin Science, talked about like what you do in your day job. Like, are there any other things that you're really passionate about, or like who is Dr. Carmen
Yeah.
Banks as a whole, just to have like a full picture of you?
Yeah. So I am a huge foodie. I live in San
Mm.
Francisco. So that's a great city for me to live in, trying out all of the restaurants and all of the food scenes that there is here. So
Yeah.
that's one huge passion of mine. I'm also very outdoorsy and like an athletic person.
Oh, wow.
So I love working out. That's one of my hobbies, fitness.
Yeah.
I also have a
Love
dog
that. Yes.
who at some point might make an appearance in this podcast looking for
Yes,
attention.
sir.
Yeah. So we go on runs. I love hiking with her. Where I went to grad school was really close to Tahoe. So
Oh,
we would
wow.
frequent Tahoe quite frequently back then. Still trying to find my hiking spots in the Bay Area. I've been here for a
Okay.
couple years, but trying to find the work-life balance to really hit the spots that are a little bit further away from weekend trips and things.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Work-life balance can be tough sometimes.
Yeah.
Just especially
Yeah.
in the star where you're in the star world and you have your own side
Yeah.
business too. So
Yeah, that's been another journey that I've been on. And over the past year, I feel like I've learned so much about myself
yeah.
by being in startup and running my own business and trying to grow my own business. But I would say that being organized has been my best friend and taking things in chunks because
Yeah.
there were times where I felt like I'm not doing enough for Melanin Science. I'm not doing enough for my scientist
Mhm.
job, but I just had to sit down and break it into little pieces and
Mhm.
accomplish those little pieces. And then when you look back, you're like, oh, wow, I actually did a lot. It just
Yeah.
seemed overwhelming at the time, but I just had to break it into little pieces to get it all done.
That's really important. Like the organization piece and also the reflection piece. I've been talking more about this recently, especially like as you're a high achiever. I think people listen to this podcast are high achievers as well. Is that it's really easy to get caught up in like the day to day and looking forward, and then we can kind of like, okay, like I'm not doing enough or what I need to be doing more. But until you take a time to reflect and be like, oh man, like I went this far, I've done this much.
Yes.
And until you had like take a second to pause and reflect, you really can't see it.
Absolutely. I was listening to another podcast, and one of the things that they had said is you can't build on a broken foundation. And
Wow.
I think as high achievers, we always have our foot on the gas and we think we always need to be going. We always need to be doing something to the point where you're running yourself to the ground. But if you're running yourself to the ground, if you're not taking care of yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever you need to do to keep going, then you're not going to be able to build anything. It's just going to be detrimental at that point. There's nothing that's going to be advantageous. So I've been trying to be really intentional about taking more space to reflect, taking more space to slow down because there's a lot of speeding up to do in the slowing down, actually. And I didn't
Yes.
realize that at first until I slowed down and I was like, oh, wow, like I needed this rest so I could recharge and get
Mhm.
excited for the next thing that we have coming up.
Yeah. It's funny how that works. I'll say continuing to learn that, because there are moments where I'm going way too fast and way too much. But definitely over the last couple of years, and more intentional about taking breaks, and like, even because I'm the type of person that I feel like I'm always on the go. Like, even when I'm traveling for stuff, I'll mix in fun there, but I feel like I'm always on.
Yeah.
So then I've been trying to be more intentional about like just unplugging, like even if it's just putting my phone usually not putting my phone on airplane mode always for too long, but like deleting social media apps off my phone or turning notifications off for like a set period of time. So I'm like truly just present.
Yes. Yeah. It is hard when you have a lot of stuff going on, but it's so important.
For sure. Well, we're almost about out of time, but I want to make sure if there's anything else about you or what you're doing with Melanin Science, as well as your day job, that you want to share, that I give you the opportunity to share about it.
If you want to learn more about Melanin Science, or you're interested in any of our programs, you can go to melanin-science.com. Some of our programming is also on YouTube at Melanin Science. And then we have our socials on TikTok and Instagram at Melanin Biology. We have a couple of cool things coming up next year. So we are partnering with another organization called Minorities in Medicine for a couple of panels and workshops in the early year. February, we'll have a couple of panels in January and March. I'm really excited. We're going to do a Black in Biotech panel for Black History Month. Yes, there's not a lot of us, so
yeah,
wanted to showcase that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we have a lot of fun events coming up, very informative, but feel free to reach out or check out our website if you're interested in the things that we have coming up.
Absolutely. I'll make sure that's linked. And just so everyone's clear, we're recording this in 2024. It's coming out in 2025. So all of those things are happening this year, this January or February, and make sure that you can stay connected on that.
Yeah, super excited.
Yeah. Well, Carmen, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing just the journey you've had with Melanin Science. I can just really sense the passion you have in this area, as well as what you're continuing to learn with what you're doing in the cultivated beets and the pharmaceuticals, and the evolution there in the Bay Area. I know I learned something today because I did not know much about it at all. I'm sure the listeners did too.
Thank you so much for having me, Paul. And thank you for everything that you do, both at your corporate job and through your nonprofit, and also through this podcast. I mean, this work is so important in expanding your reach and putting people in the position where they can talk about their experiences and exposing other people to all of the different opportunities and experiences of other people. It's really phenomenal. So thank you so much for everything that you do.
No, thank you. That means a lot. That means so much.
Absolutely.
For everyone listening, I know you got something from Dr. Carmen Banks' story. It is an incredible story of just going after what's in front of you and just saying yes, like you mentioned earlier. So if there's things you have questions about, whether you're in college or you're in grad school, trying to decide on different opportunities, say yes, learn from it. You can learn what you don't like as much as stuff that you do like. And I think that's just as important. Maybe you don't like the farm animals or the chickens, but you like to do stuff that is in another area that you're passionate about. Go for it. Keep learning, keep growing, and you can truly be incredible. Thanks for listening.
Be sure to rate and review this podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform. We'll see you here next time. And be incredible.